This is the Original Firefighter Podcast, where we talk about anything you would talk about at the firehouse kitchen table. And sometimes we even talk about fighting fires. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to a special edition of the Original Firefighter Podcast, just in time for the spooky season. Today we have 3 stories we want to share with you. The first story you're going to hear is the haunted history of Camp Grant, located in Rockford, Illinois. The second story we have comes to us from a firefighter who was assigned at Old Firehouse Number 7, which is located on the grounds of Camp Grant. Some say it's still haunted today. The third story we have for you comes to us from a man who requested that we keep his identity secret. He was on a medical call as the lead paramedic when he encountered something paranormal and possibly possessed. So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn if you got some, I guess, get a blanket, turn out the lights, and enjoy. Original Firefighter presents
Frighteners and the Firefighter.
Camp Grant and the Ghosts of 1918. They say the dead leave traces, whispers in the winds, shadows in the corners of dark places. In Rockford, Illinois, the ghosts of 1918 still linger. They are the soldiers of Camp Grant, the sisters who gave their lives, and the commander who could not bear the weight of his own decisions. Camp Grant was built in 1917, a city of wood and dust on the edge of Rockford. Tens of thousands of young men trained here, dreaming of France. But the ground they marched on would become a graveyard before they ever saw battle. In 1918 it arrived, the Spanish flu. At first, just a few fevers, a cough, a chill. Then, as if some unseen hand had swept through the barracks, entire companies fell ill. They gasped for air, their lips turning blue, their lungs filling with fluid. The hospital filled to bursting levels. Beds lined hallways. Tents rose outside. Some soldiers said the camp seemed cursed. On September 23rd, 75 men died in one day. Within 2 weeks, more than 1,000 were gone. So many telegrams left Rockford that the sound of messengers' knocks came to feel like a death knell. The city's churches tolled their bells daily. Families wept. Streets fell silent. Among the mourners were 2 sisters, Blenda and Anna Kilgren, teachers at Rockford High School, daughters of Andrew and Christina. When schools closed, they did not retreat home. They went into the sick rooms, carrying food, tending fevers, offering what little comfort they could. But influenza does not spare mercy. On October 18th, Blenda fell. On October 19th, Anna followed. 2 sisters buried side by side. Their spirits walked together still. 2 young women who chose duty and paid with their lives. At the head of Camp Grant stood Colonel Charles Hagedorn, a career soldier devoted to his men. He believed discipline and close order drills would prepare them for war. But discipline became a curse. Close formations turned the barracks into breeding grounds. Each night, Hagedorn read the casualty reports. Each morning, more names were gone. He blamed himself. He heard the whispers of the dead. On October 7th, 1918, Hagedorn took his service revolver into his quarters. A single shot rang out. It is this act that ended his torment. However, his ghost may have never left Camp Grant, still pacing the halls, searching for the many lost. A colonel undone by guilt. 2 sisters taken by sacrifice. 1,000 young men silenced before they ever saw the front. They had not fallen by bullets or bombs, but by an invisible enemy that showed no mercy. And yet, when the fog settles over the old grounds of Camp Grant, when the bells toll in Rockford, some say you can feel them still. The weight of their service, the sorrow of their loss, the ghosts of 1918. The war ended, the camp closed. Their spirits linger, the cough of unseen soldiers drifting on the wind. 2 sisters forever side by side, tending the sick who were long buried. And a colonel walking his camp eternally, a commander with no men left to lead. The ghosts of 1918 remain.
Well, that was definitely some haunted history. I'm surely happy that I don't live anywhere near Camp Grant. Our next story comes to us from driver Chris Perello, who was actually stationed at old Firehouse Number 7. He tells us a story of hauntings that may relate to our haunted history of Camp Grant. Sit back and enjoy.
My name is Chris Perello. I have been in the fire service for 22 years. I was lucky enough to get hired at a very young age on my hometown department, and a department I've always wanted to be on. And I remember usually we start off and we end up going to a couple of the busier downtown companies, and there were some outlying stations. One of those outlying stations happened to be at the airport, and it was Station 7 at the time. You would always hear these little stories, people that didn't want to work there, people that would be offered overtime or have to work for somebody, and when the chief would tell them they'd have to go to Station 7, they would decline or they'd say that they weren't going to go there. But it was a little hard to believe. It seemed a little far-fetched. Station 7, just a little background of the building itself. If I could paint a picture for you, it would be rooms within rooms within rooms. There was actually one large room that even within that room had another framed out couple of walls and doors where you had another room within. So it was a very chopped up building. It didn't flow. We had a suppression unit running out of one side of the building, and then we had the airport apparatus running out the other side of the building for the airport service. What was unique about that is occasionally the way the sleeping arrangements would work is that if you went down to that station and the airport people would go on a call, you potentially could be in that bunk room all by yourself. So these things kind of crossed your mind, but you didn't think much of it. I never truly wanted to be assigned there, but there was a big group, a young group of us that got picked to go down and go to this station because they wanted us certified in airport rescue firefighting, or those of us that know it, called ARF. So there was a group, and actually one of the hosts of this podcast, Phil Nedved, he was my classmate in the academy some time ago, and we got assigned down there together. So we were excited, we were scared, we were young, and we'd always just joke about everything we had heard and all the stories. We got assigned there in 2009. I was there for a year and a half, and I remember from the very first shift ever on, we would always be pranking with each other and joking with each other. And I remember one night in particular, there was a group of guys that wanted me to sleep in one of those large rooms within the room. I was sleeping in the room, and I actually slept. Here I am, 23 years old at the time, sleeping with the light on and the TV on and laying in bed, eyes wide open. I vividly remember laying there, and out of nowhere, the computer chair goes flying across the room. Immediately after, though, I heard everybody just dying laughing. So I knew this is not a haunting by any means. But immediately I saw everybody jump up, and what they had done was they took a fishing line, put it all the way around the border of the room, tied it to the chair that was on wheels. Right when they knew I was laying down in bed, they pulled it across the floor. So this was the beginning of I think all the hauntings and everything you heard, it was just a big joke. It actually wasn't, there was nothing there. I went shift after shift after shift, never experienced anything. I even remember Phil Nedved and myself, we went down in the basement of the station. There's a boiler room. And there was even rumors of somebody putting a cot there and sleeping down there and hearing all sorts of noises. And we'd go down there and the lights would be off and we'd be like a couple of schoolgirls and getting all giddy and laughing and thinking like something's there and running up the stairs and making something out of nothing. So some time had gone by. I bet you had been, I don't know, at this point, probably 9 months in. And even though this wasn't a busy station at the time, this was probably the least amount of sleep I had ever gotten in my career, even of years on the ambulance, because I literally would sleep with one eye open. And there was good reason for that, though, because everybody knew I was scared. So what would happen is even if I would find some time to fall asleep for 20 minutes, I would see a shadow of somebody come crawling over. Often, actually, times it'd be Nedved, and he would come crawling over, and he would, for whatever reason, say "Naked Nettie," and I'd say "No, Naked Nettie, no, Naked Nettie," and it just turned into this joke, and we'd be laughing. At times, somebody would hide under the bed, and you would fall asleep, and the minute they'd hear you breathing, they'd come and they'd put their arm on top of you. There was just time after time after time where you lost so much sleep and would go home and have to tell your girlfriend or your family you had a really rough night when you maybe had a call, if you had a call. One thing I do want to point out is a lot of times being newer, you would just sleep in whatever bed's open. Anybody in the fire service knows how that goes. You don't really have a bed. A lot of the airport guys would be the senior members, and they would go pick and sleep in their individual rooms, the rooms within the rooms, like I said. So what would happen is if you were on the other apparatus, like I said earlier, and a call would go for whichever apparatus you weren't on, you're in that bunk room all by yourself after hearing all these stories. And after having all these, false frights where you're just, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. I would oftentimes get up in the middle of the night, actually, when the crew would go. And here I am again, like I said, 22, 3 years old. I would turn the lights on in the hallway and wait for the crew to come back. So months and months had gone by. And what had happened the one night is something that I tell people, and it's matched up with other people's stories, and it absolutely made me believe that something was there. I remember one night, it was like 3 a.m. I got up because I had to pee. I went over to the urinal, and I was standing there, and I was going to the bathroom, and I vividly remember, and just to clarify, I knew exactly where I was at. I knew what time it was. I knew what day of the week it was. This wasn't just me sleepwalking. And I remember hearing a woman's voice. And then I heard a smack. And then I heard kids crying. And at that point, I didn't want to believe what I heard. So I actually remember not being too scared initially. I remember thinking, I don't know why. It's 3 a.m. Why does the lieutenant have his family here? I have no idea. So I went down the hallway and I went over to the stairs, and it's this dark stairway. And I remember I was just waiting because I did actually hear some steps going down the stairs. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know why somebody's down there. What's going on? It's so bizarre for somebody to be at the station. Nobody comes to the station at this time of night. It's not even allowed. So I remember I was standing there, and I was standing there. Oh, I'm thinking, Lieutenant's going to come up in a minute. He's going to be like, my family stopped by. I don't know, this issue, X, Y, and Z. And nothing happened. And I'm listening, nothing. Still standing there, nothing. I'm sure it was just a few minutes, but it felt like I was standing there for 20 minutes. So then I look over at one of those random rooms, because there's rooms within rooms within rooms, and the rooms that I know where the officers sleep in this particular station. I went over and I knocked on the door, and the lieutenant answers the door, and you can tell he obviously was sleeping and completely dumbfounded as to why I was at his door. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, what's up, LT? Why is your family here?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, your family. I just heard your wife, and I just, the kids, I don't know why they're here. Like, I heard a smack, and I heard, the kids crying." And he said, "My family's not here." He said, "Nobody should be here." And I was like, "You mean to tell me you weren't just downstairs? You didn't just go down the stairs, go down in the hallway?" "No." Looking back at everybody in their bunk and in the dorms, everybody's accounted for. There should be nobody in the station at this time. At that point, it dawned on me, what the hell? Something is not right here. I'm taught here, if it's any indication of how real this was, I am 23 years old, I have a career, I have my own house, and I am a grown man by definition of the word, and I go and wake up my lieutenant because I'm scared. At that point, I realized something was going on in this station. He told me, he calmed me down. He goes, "Listen," because this lieutenant for years has told me every night when he lays in his bunk, the locker does some weird jiggle, makes a weird noise, and it happens every single night before he turns in for the night, when he turns off his light. He's always known something was there, and he tried to calm me down. He said, "Hey, listen, Chris," he said, "I know this station makes weird noises. I know they can't be explained. I know that there's sounds that people have talked about, and it's all true. It's all real. It's not going to hurt you, but it's all real." I just love that he told me that, like, that was actually going to make me comfortable. At that point, I straight up asked him if I was just going to take my radio and go sleep out in my car in the parking lot. I'd rather be in the parking lot with a radio than be laying in this station knowing what I heard, because it was real and I heard it. For so long, I didn't think anything would happen in that station. I called everybody's bluff. I heard the stories, didn't believe it. I was able to, weather the storm of all the pranks and all the jokes. But when I heard what I heard at that urinal that night, I know for sure that something was in this facility. Something without a doubt. Some spirit, some ghost, nobody that's going to harm you, but something is there. Something is there.
Well, Chris, thanks for that delightful little story. I really appreciate it. I didn't find it very scary, actually, other than some guy named Naked Nettie. I mean, come on. What are you thinking? I bet the mom and the little kid crying were probably really nice and probably just a little mix-up. Sometimes children need to be disciplined in certain ways, and, we all do that sometimes. So, it's okay. But Naked Nettie, ugh, that's my nightmare fuel. Thanks, buddy. Our next story comes to us from a guy who didn't want his identity known. And there's obviously a certain reason, because he's a paramedic. What do they do? Not really sure. But he runs into something that's a little creepy. I would say, again, probably very delightful. So why don't we go ahead and get into his story? Thank you very much for inviting me here to speak, and thank you very much for allowing me to protect my identity. It's one of those calls that you never want to think about again, and especially that you don't want anybody to remember that you were on. So myself and my partner were greatly affected by this, and I still get goosebumps thinking about it to this day. It's one of those calls that you'll just never forget. So I've been in the fire service for over 20 years now. I'm a firefighter paramedic, and at this time I was on the ambulance, responding to calls in the role of that paramedic. My partner at the time had also had about 15 years on the job. This call took place about 10 years ago now. So we were assigned to an ambulance company, It was early in the morning. We were coming back to the station after another call, some run-of-the-mill call that you forget, very forgettable type of call. Grandma fell and hurt her ankle, or foot pain, tooth pain, you name it, we've done it all. But the call that took place after is the one that really shook us to our core. So we were called for a potentially
Medic 9.
mental health issue.
I need you to respond for a medical call.
We went into the call, responded that we were en route.
Medic 9, en route.
We got on scene to the call, and it was completely dark outside, and the ladder company that was dispatched with us was still in quarters. We were pretty close to the call, so we got on scene very quickly.
Medic 9, on scene.
10-4, Medic 9.
Saw the mother of our patient standing at the front door. At that time, we thought, oh, this is going to be nothing. We kind of read the notes on the computer. This teenage girl not acting appropriately. So we thought, it could be drugs, could be, some other mental health issue that we've come into contact with plenty of times throughout our careers. So as we approached the house, I had radioed to our dispatch that we could handle this call alone. The ladder company actually never even left the station at that point, so that was good for them. They were able to get back in bed and go to sleep, and we tried taking care of each other and helping out where we can, and if that means canceling them, it's what we do. So as we walk up to the house, Mom is standing there at the doorway. The house itself is still dark on the inside, but there was just this front porch light on, very dimly lit. As we approached, we could tell she was pretty upset, and she was somewhat crying and sobbing. We asked her what was going on, and she told us, it's my daughter. She said that she's just not acting appropriate right now. At that point, I believe my partner probably asked, any history of this, her not acting this way? And she said, no, this has never happened before. Nothing like this has ever happened before. I asked at that point, potentially, if there was any drug use. 4 o'clock in the morning, that this teenage girl was awake and acting not appropriate. Maybe there was something like that. Mom said, no, nothing like this. She's never done drugs. So okay, so we saw the girl in the house. This was a ranch-style home, single story. When you walk into the house, you have the living room there. And then there's a doorway that goes back, one way to the bedrooms, the other way to the kitchen. She was sitting in a chair right next to that doorway. And I'll never forget, above her head was a crucifix. This was a very religious family. Pictures of Jesus on the walls. The crucifix is up. But what I noticed was the little girl, 14, 15 years old, sitting in that chair, rocking back and forth with her arms crossed, looking at the ground. Just rocking and rocking. I walked up to her and I kind of went down to her level, and that's what they teach you as a paramedic, get down to your patient's level and talk to them. Don't talk at them, talk with them. So I got down to her level and I got on one knee. As I did that, I looked at her and I said, what's going on today, dear? And at that moment, she looked up at me. With this look in her eyes, and the scare that I get right now telling the story, but the look in her eyes, she looked up at me and she said,
He's coming.
And at that point, I got a little nervous. It wasn't an appropriate response to what I was asking. But I looked back at Mom and my partner, and I could tell in my partner's face he was as shocked as I was. And Mom started to cry some more and continued to cry. I looked back at her, and she was looking down at the ground again, rocking back and forth. And I asked her a question. I said, who's coming, dear? And she looked up at me again with an even more sinister type of look in her eyes, and somewhat of a smile on her face. And she said,
Is coming.
And as soon as she said those words, that crucifix that was above her head, however it was stuck to the wall, a nail at the top and a nail at the bottom, it wasn't upright anymore. It had inverted and was upside down. And at that point, me and my partner kind of looked at each other and were like, well, I'm done. It was all we can do. We're out, as this child needs Jesus, obviously, or a priest, or potentially an exorcism. So we talked to Mom, and we told her, I don't know if transport to the emergency room by ambulance is the best, even though we would more than happy to do it, deep down knowing that we really didn't want to do it though. So we talked to Mom and gave her some other options rather than the emergency room. Mom said that she would take her to her own doctor in the morning in a few hours, once the sun had come up, and make that appointment right away. As we left the house, the still dark house, we walked out the front door, started to walk down, back to the ambulance down the path. I looked back over my shoulder, and I saw that girl standing at the doorway with that same look on her face, watching us as we left. We got in the ambulance, and we kind of both looked at each other with shock and had no idea how to even go about processing what just happened. The thing with us was we used to like to watch scary movies, and that was what we did that night before we started to go on runs. So it was just kind of fell in line with what we thought was fun. It wasn't much fun anymore. So we got in the ambulance. The back of the ambulance in the patient compartment was dark. We didn't have the light on at the time because it was so bright at night that it was distracting, so we had it turned off. That moment I looked at my partner, I said, dude, what if she's in the back? What if she followed us out here? I mean, she was at the door, she followed us to the door, we didn't even know. He said, don't say that. How dare you say that? And I was like, we gotta check. So we looked back and we turned the lights on from the front, and thankfully no one was back there. But it was that split second that you thought maybe she did follow us back. At that moment we realized we need to leave now. So we got back to the station, got back in bed, laid there for about 20 minutes knowing I wasn't going to be able to sleep that night anyways. But laying there on my back just staring up at the wall, and next thing I know, I have whispering in my ear.
What the f? Well, I'm happy that was the last story we have for today. It's a good thing it's midday, and I don't have to sleep for a few hours, and I'm going to put up a picture of Jesus above my bed today. So thanks for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed these scary stories. If you have any yourself, go ahead and email us at info@originalfirefighter.com. Let us know your story, and maybe we'll share yours in the future. So everyone, be safe.
This has been the Original Firefighter Podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. Tune in each week on Wednesdays for a new episode. Like and follow us on all social media platforms, and subscribe to our YouTube channel today.